Welcome, everybody, to our first episode of Tropics Time. I'm meteorologist Joe Martucci. Next to me, meteorologist Sean Sublette. This is going to be a recurring series we're going to have for you all throughout hurricane season. When it's quieter, we'll have less videos. When it's more active, we'll have more videos multiple times a day, even. For now, we're going to talk about Tropical Storm Bret here that is in the open Atlantic Ocean. It is a weak tropical storm. Winds are 45 miles an hour. Its latitude is 12.2 degrees north latitude. So it is actually pretty far south for a tropical system, moving west at 18 miles an hour. And Sean, we were talking about this offline. This storm is unusual to have developed this far east this early in hurricane season.
Yeah, the water is unusually warm. In some places in the central Atlantic, it's 3 to 5 degrees warmer than normal. Taking a look at the water vapor imagery, this is what we use to get a good handle on what air currents are doing through the whole depth of the atmosphere. And one of the things, if you look real closely, you can see the big blob down the bottom center part of the screen. That's actually the tropical storm. But just above that or north of that, there's kind of that darker black or darker gray shade. That's showing us kind of how the steering winds are or forcing it along from east to west. And then you look back way over toward the continental United States, it's a lot more noisy. You see a lot more movement coming from the bottom left to the top right. And that's why we just don't think it's going to have much of a chance to ever get this far. I say this far, I mean back to the States. So this is something that's going to be an issue for the Caribbean, but it does not look like it's going to be an issue for us
Yeah,
at all.
yeah,
So, with
absolutely.
that in mind, take a little bit closer look, Joe, at some of the steering currents as we look at how they're going to appear a few more days in advance.
Yeah. We're looking right now at upper level heights. And what that means is how thick the atmosphere is at a certain um, millibar of air pressure level. In this case, what we're trying to show you is where you see those reds essentially, that's an area of higher pressure. We look at high pressure, it does spin clockwise in the northern hemisphere, counterclockwise in the southern hemisphere. And that's why these storms go from east to west, from the coast of Africa into the Lesser Antilles, into Hispaniola, and oftentimes they curve to the north and the northeast. But what's happening here, we're looking at Thursday now, that red area is essentially acting like a stop sign and saying, hey, this tropical system can't go any further north. It is being blocked by what we call in the weather world a ridge of high pressure. And that ridge of high pressure pretty much stays with us through about Friday, and then it starts to weaken. But by the time we get towards Friday and Saturday, this storm could already be weakening, and we don't have much to worry about in terms of this system, in terms of Bert going to the north with time. And then by the time we get towards next Saturday, you see another red area off the coast of Africa. That's a ridge of high pressure. That's going to keep that area fairly dry. So we're not really expecting more storms to roll off of Africa, strengthen into a named storm or a hurricane. It's really Bert, and then that system that's just to the east of it. We'll talk about that in a second. But east of that, not really much. And we look at our water temps, Sean. You were touching on this before. We are warm, and there's a lot of red on the map. And you might be thinking, hey, it's the tropics. It's supposed to be warm, but that's just not always the case this time of the year.
Yeah, I mean, it ultimately gets at its warmest later on into August through September before starting to fade away in October. But as we mentioned at the outset, a lot of the water is 3, 4, 5 degrees warmer than it typically is this time of year. Again, it's normally running well into the 70s. Some places in the Atlantic Basin already have touched over 80 degrees with water temperature. And once you get past the mid 70s, that's when it's a lot more conducive to get tropical storm development. So let's go to the particulars and the stats on Brett for the 5 o'clock advisory from the hurricane. So from the Hurricane Center, Joe, talk to us.
Yeah, so Bert again moving west at 18 miles an hour. It's a weak tropical system. It is right now just pretty much hanging out in the middle of the Atlantic, but it is moving west and making its way into parts of the Antilles as we go forward in time. We look at Brett, excuse me, as we go into Wednesday and Thursday. Sometime Thursday into early Friday, this system will make landfall in one of these Caribbean islands here in the Antilles as a strong tropical storm. That's the latest forecast from the National Hurricane Center. But then, like I said about a minute ago, the storm is going to weaken. And yeah, it could have a potential to move north after Saturday, but you see that the storm is already doing its thing, weakening down into a weak tropical storm by Saturday. Sean, we like to say in the weather world, it goes into the graveyard here, the weather graveyard. That is that part of the Caribbean Sea, south of Jamaica, east of Central America, where sometimes these storms just kind of fizzle out. So certainly, from a 360 view perspective, a relatively tame storm, but still, when you're looking at places like Bridgetown and getting into some parts of the Lesser Antilles here, there we're going to have some stronger winds. We're going to have some storm surge and some heavier rains, but these islands have certainly seen much worse here. Let's go to our tropical outlook, Sean, because we were saying this isn't the only system we are paying attention to.
No, there's another one behind that, and that's also unusual to have not just one, but two systems kind of taking shape out there. This one is a little farther off to the east versus Brett right now, a little better than even odds over the next 2 to 5 days. This one is going to become a full-on tropical depression. And remember, that's the level below tropical storm status. So it's got to have a legit circulation and produce some winds that are 25, 30 miles an hour before it ever even gets to tropical storm status. So there's still very likely going to be some kind of formation out of this next system behind Brett over the coming few days or so. And, as we said, this is very early in the season. Talk about the climatology, Joe.
Oh yeah, it's definitely an early one here. When you're talking about storms forming this far east, right? So pretty much halfway between the Antilles and Africa. Typically, this is a July, August, September, October thing, not really a June thing. And it's one of only a handful of times. I don't have the exact number, but it's less than five that we've seen a storm start to form this far east into a tropical storm this early in the season during the month of June. So, Bert, certainly something that is unusual for us here. And we look at our tropical climatology, we are just getting started with hurricane season. It runs from June 1st until November 30th here, but pretty much between now through August 1st, we're kind of even in terms of just seeing a couple of tropical storms, hurricanes, or major hurricanes. Then we get that big spike up from August into September, peaking right around Labor Day, just afterwards, really around September 10th. And then it's a slower decline through middle October. And then the steeper decline comes mid October back into November. And again, hurricane season ends on November 30th. So take us home with Tropical Storm Bret, Sean, and tell us what we need to know.
Yeah, the take home points is that it will be going into the Caribbean Sea this weekend, remaining a tropical storm. We do not expect it to elevate into legit hurricane status, but still, this thing's going to have 30, 40 mile an hour winds pretty easily, even in the Lesser Antilles, Barbados, Dominica, Martinique, those locations. And they'll get some heavy rain out of it, nothing that's going to do a lot of damage. And it poses no threat at all to the continental United States, whether it's Miami, whether it's Charleston, South Carolina, Myrtle Beach, Outer Banks, Jersey Shore, New England, no threat whatsoever to the continental United States. So, Joe, that's it for now. And as we said, it was kind of unusual. We thought we'd have a little more time before we started talking about the tropics, but man, it has jumped in a big way early.
Yep. So we have Tropical Storm Bret that we are covering here, and we'll be doing more updates as we go forward in time with this, Sean. And this is our Tropics Time series. So if you have any suggestions or recommendations, you can follow us on social media above. Tell us what you want to see. We'll certainly take into consideration, but we hope to keep you informed and keep you safe, especially when these storms come closer to the United States. So thanks again for watching, everybody. For Sean Sublette, I'm meteorologist Joe Martucci. We'll talk to you soon.